Behind every locked door lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Welcome to Behind Bars TV, where we uncover the hidden realities of the world's toughest prisons, untold inmate experiences, and the systems built to contain them. From supermax facilities to forgotten penitentiaries, we revealed the truth behind concrete walls and razor wire. This is not fiction. This is the world behind bars. Subscribe and stay locked in. Until next time, keep your mind open and your curiosity sharp. The unit that even Angola tried to forget. There is a part of Angola prison so feared, so violent, so psychologically destructive, that even Angola, the toughest maximum security prison in America, shut it down. Not because it got old, not because it was empty, but because the stories coming out of Camp J were too dark, too bloody, too uncontrollable to survive public scrutiny. Camp J wasn't a disciplinary unit. It was a punishment experiment. Isolation on top of isolation. Silence on top of silence. Darkness that swallowed men whole. This is the place where inmates broke, where guards refused overtime, where even the warden kept the lights off during walkthroughs. Tonight, we're stepping inside Camp J, the segregation unit so feared that officers still won't say its name after they retire. And we're meeting the men who live there, the guards who work there, and the ghosts, both literal and psychological, that never left its walls. Welcome to Camp J, Angola's nightmare within a nightmare. What Camp J really? Camp J opened in the 1970s as a disciplinary camp. But inside Angola, everyone knew the truth. Camp J was where they sent the men they wanted gone. Not physically, but mentally. Inmates described it as the hole of the hole, the place beneath hell, where the prison buried people alive. Cells measured the size of a small bathroom. 24-hour lockdown. No phone calls. No books. No yard time. No talking. Just concrete, darkness, and whatever lived inside your mind. A former CO said, if someone went to Camp J for 6 months, you were lucky if they came back with their heads still attached to their sanity. But it wasn't the isolation that broke people. It was what the unit became after years of violence, neglect, and secrets. And one warden's quiet decision changed everything. They stopped fixing the place. No repairs. No upgrades. No renovations. Camp J was allowed to rot. And in that rot, something else grew. Something nobody could control. The night the lights went out, the hum of electricity dies. Total darkness. A scream echoes from somewhere down the hall. Every former CO brings up the same night. The night the lights went out. Not for seconds. Not for minutes. For 7 hours. During a thunderstorm in the mid-90s, the power station feeding Camp J failed. Generators kicked on everywhere else on the property, except here. Camp J dropped into a darkness, so absolute the guards couldn't see their own hands. And what happened next became legend. Inmates say they heard someone walking down the tier. Slow, heavy footsteps. Breathing that wasn't human. Cell doors rattling. Voices whispering from inside sealed cells. One man, still alive today, said, it felt like something came up out the floor and walked past every door, sniffing who it wanted. A guard described a sound like metal claws dragging along the concrete. Another said no human voice made the screams he heard that night. When the lights finally came back on, 2 inmates were unconscious. 1 guard quit on the spot. And in cell 24, carved into the wall, were the letters, J is mine. To this day, no one knows who or what wrote that. The inmate in cell 24 swore he never touched the wall. There were no fingerprints, no tools, just the carving and the smell of wet earth. Interview with a man who survived Camp J. His name is Marcus Red LeBlanc. He spent 11 months inside Camp J in the late 90s. When we asked him to describe the place, he laughed. Not because it was funny. Because he said he didn't know where to start. He leaned forward and said, Camp J don't break you. It unravels you. Marcus told us things we'd heard whispers about, but never this clearly. he said. Men talked to walls that answered back. Guards refused to walk the tier alone. Inmates saw shadows move where shadows shouldn't move. Voices whispered from vents that weren't connected to anything. Food trays slid across the floor at night when no guard were present. He described hearing something scraping the floor outside his cell at 2 a.m. He said the scraping stopped at his door. Then a voice whispered, "Sit up." He refused. The next morning, he woke to find his mattress slashed. From top to bottom, perfectly straight lines. No weapon was ever found. When we asked Marcus what he thought lived inside Camp J, he said, "It ain't ghosts. It ain't demons. It's what happens when too many broken men get stacked on top of each other, and the building absorbs all that pain." He stopped, looked at us, and said quietly, "That place is alive." The guard who quit mid-shift. He lasted 47 minutes inside Camp J. That's it. Officer Branson was a new hire. Young, fit, confident. The kind of guy who joked through training. He didn't laugh after Camp J. Branson was assigned to shadow a veteran CO, learning how to conduct segregation checks. The storm that night rattled the old metal roofs. Thunder shook the walls. The veteran warned him before they entered. "Keep your eyes straight. If you hear anything behind you, don't turn around." Branson thought he was kidding. Inside the tier, inmates were silent, which is unnatural for segregation. The only sound was the hum of the emergency lights. The smell was heavy, damp, metallic. Halfway down the tier, Branson's flashlight flickered, then cut out completely. He banged it against his palm. Nothing. The emergency lights dimmed too, fading in and out like they were nervous. Then he heard it. Footsteps behind him. Slow, deliberate, not matching the steps of the veteran next to him. Branson turned around. The veteran grabbed his arm. "Don't." But it was too late. When Branson turned, he saw a figure standing in the middle of the hallway, tall, hunched, impossible to focus on, like a shadow wearing no source. It tilted its head, then stepped toward him. Branson dropped his flashlight and ran full speed toward the exit, slipping on the wet concrete and slamming into the outer gate. He didn't even come back for his badge. When asked later what he saw, Branson said, "It wasn't a man. It didn't move like a man. And it didn't blink." He never entered another prison again. The cell that never stayed empty. Camp J had 96 cells. One of them was never supposed to be used. C-13. Guards avoided it. Inmates begged not to be housed near it. And even maintenance workers refused to touch it. The reason? C-13 never stayed empty. Even when it was empty, multiple officers would swear on record that bedding would be disturbed. Writing would appear on the walls. Water would trickle from a sink that wasn't connected to plumbing. The toilet would flush itself. A shadow would stand inside the cell when the tier was empty. One guard claimed he saw a man sitting on the bunk, dark, still, watching him. But the moment he shined his flashlight inside the cell, the bunk was empty and cold. In the late 80s, Camp J leadership tried to seal C-13. They welded the door shut. The next morning, the welds had popped. No signs of tampering. No residue. Just broken. A former sergeant told us. They should have buried that whole tier instead of trying to use it. The prisoner who disappeared twice. You can run from a prison, but you can't run inside a sealed segregation unit. Yet one inmate, known only as Davis, disappeared twice inside Camp J. The first time happened in 1991. Guards doing morning count noticed his cell door didn't open when the motorized doors activated. They checked the small observation window. No inmate. Nothing but a folded blanket on the bed. They opened the door. Empty. Concrete was cold. Bed still made. Food tray untouched. Davis wasn't seen again until 5 hours later, sitting calmly in his cell during lunchtime, smiling. He said, "I never left." They transferred him to another tier. 2 days later, he disappeared again. This time he was found inside C-13, the sealed cell. Door unwelded. No explanation. After that, Camp J shut down that entire section of the building for 3 months. Davis was moved to a mental health facility. He refused to speak to anyone, except one guard. He told that guard, "Camp J has holes, and they ain't on the blueprint." The sleep experiment they won't acknowledge. Former Camp J inmates mentioned something called the sleep room. Officially, no such room existed. Unofficially, every man we interviewed described it the same way. A pitch-black cell with no mattress, no toilet, no running water, no window, no sound except the hum of electricity. Inmates say they were taken there when they acted out. Some stayed 1 night. Some stayed 3. One man claims he stayed 9 days. He said he lost track of time. He hallucinated voices whispering names. He felt someone breathing inches from his face. His skin felt watched. His heartbeat echoed off the walls. Something inside the room laughed when he tried to sleep. When guards finally opened the door, the man was huddled in a corner, shaking violently, murmuring, "The room don't let you sleep, 'cause it don't sleep." Medical records from that period are missing. Camp J staff refused to acknowledge the room exists. But every inmate who survived it insists on one thing. When you leave the sleep room, it follows you. The guard who brought a Bible and left without his voice. Officer Raymond Cole was a deeply religious man. He requested Camp J shifts because he believed he could bring hope to the men inside. He lasted 2 weeks. On his final night shift, Cole brought a Bible with him. He walked the tier humming a gospel tune, offering prayers to any inmate who asked. Then he reached C-13. The humming stopped. His partner watched Cole freeze, eyes locked on the cell. Cole whispered, "He's not supposed to be here." The partner asked who he meant. Cole didn't answer. He stepped closer to the door. The Bible fell from his hand. Cole screamed, a raw, broken scream, and staggered backward, clutching his throat. He couldn't speak. Not then. Not after. Not ever again. Doctors said his vocal cords were destroyed. But there were no tears. No bruises. No physical trauma. Cole retired early. He communicates now with a pen and paper. We met him off camera. He wrote one sentence. C-13 took my voice because it wanted it. The day Camp J shut down for good. Camp J being locked, doors welded shut. Officially, Camp J closed because it was outdated. Unofficially, the final straw was the incident of March 12, 2013. What happened that day is sealed. Records are redacted. 4 reports were shredded. 3 officers were transferred. And 1 inmate who was supposed to be in his cell was found unresponsive in the hallway, as if he'd been dropped there. The cameras didn't catch how he got out. They didn't catch who put him there. They didn't catch anything. Every malfunction log from that day is missing. Every officer on duty refuses to talk. The warden said there was no wrongdoing. But a maintenance worker who helped lock the doors that evening told us that place wasn't shutting down. It was being contained. And then he added, whatever still lives in Camp J needs those doors shut. The wing they sealed with welding torches. When Camp J officially shut down, you'd expect it to be emptied, cleaned, and mothballed like any old prison unit. But that isn't what happened. Certain wings weren't just locked. They were physically sealed, welded, bolted, reinforced. Not because inmates were inside, not because of structural damage, but because of what kept happening even when the cells were empty. One officer who supervised the sealing process told us that wing wasn't being closed. It was being buried. When we asked why, he reluctantly told us about the last night the wing was active. For empty cells had fresh footprints in the dust. A bunk was found ripped from the wall, in a cell with no inmate. A metal food tray was halfway under the door of a locked cell, but the latch had never opened. A mop bucket left in the hallway moved 12 feet overnight, captured only in blurry streaks on grainy CCTV. The officer paused before finishing the story. His voice cracked when he said, "We heard someone crying in the last cell, but that cell wasn't assigned to nobody for years." When they opened it, nothing inside. Just a single phrase scratched into the wall. Let me out too. The last inmate ever housed in Camp J. Camp J's door opening for the final time. His paperwork was almost completely redacted. His arrival was late at night. And unlike every other inmate transfer, no one met him at intake. The last inmate placed in Camp J was known only as Inmate #12289B. No public name. No photo. No documented crime. Guards say he paced constantly. Never slept. Never ate a full meal. One rookie officer said he heard #12289 be humming a low tune every night. But one morning, the humming stopped. The officer looked into the cell, and the inmate was gone, vanished. No broken bars. No open doors. No disturbance to the bed. No sign he ever left. Just a dark stain on the concrete. Not blood, not water. Something thicker. Lab tests returned inconclusive organic material. When we asked an old sergeant if he believed the state explanation, an escape, he shook his head. Then he said the words almost every guard now repeats. Camp J don't let men escape. It keeps what it wants. Within 48 hours of the disappearance, the decision was made. Camp J would never hold another inmate again. He guard who heard his own voice. Officer Damien Holt worked Camp J longer than anyone on his shift. He didn't scare easy. Didn't believe in ghosts. Didn't tolerate inmate games. But one night changed him completely. While walking the F tier, his radio crackled, faint at first, then clearer. He heard a voice whisper, "Holt. Holt over here." He assumed it was another officer. He replied, "Who is this?" "Identify." The voice came back. "Come to the end of the tier." Holt walked down cautiously. No officers. No inmates. Just cold air and silence. His radio crackled again. The same voice whispered, "Turn around." Holt spun instantly, flashlight raised, ready for anything. Except what he saw. Nothing. No one. Just the rusted tier stretching behind him. Then the radio came alive with one last whisper. His own voice saying, "I told you not to turn." Holt dropped the radio. Quit the next morning. Moved out of Louisiana 2 weeks later. He refuses interviews. But his friend, a former CO, told us, Holt ain't scared of inmates. He's scared of himself. The scratches that bled. When Camp J was being evacuated for shutdown, maintenance was tasked with documenting structural damage. They expected cracks, loose bolts, rust. They didn't expect to find scratches, fresh, deep, and wet. In 3 different cells, there were claw marks dug so deeply into the concrete that dust still lay on the floor beneath them. But here's the part that terrified everyone. Some of the scratches were bled into. The substance tested positive for hemoglobin. But no inmate had been housed in those cells for months. One worker said, "It looked like someone clawed the wall until their fingers were raw." Another added, "But the scratches go up the wall, like whoever did it wasn't touching the floor." When asked if they found fingerprints, the supervisor said, "We found prints, but they were too small to be from an adult." They refused to elaborate. The singing in Cell 8. Every inmate we interviewed from every era mentioned Cell 8. Before Camp J shut down, guards noted nightly reports of soft humming, a low lullaby, a woman's voice, echoes that didn't match the acoustics, a tapping rhythm on the sink. Here's the unsettling part. Cell 8 has no record of a female inmate, ever. The earliest known account came from 1981, when an inmate banging on his door begged a guard, "Make her stop singing, or I'm going to lose my mind." When the guard approached the cell, there was no woman, just a man curled in the corner, trembling, hands over his ears. He whispered, "She's in the wall. She's behind the wall." In 2006, a guard late on night shift walked past Cell 8 and clearly heard a woman humming an old Louisiana lullaby. "Go to sleep, little baby." When he opened the door, nothing. But one detail made him walk off the job that night. The concrete bunk was still warm, as if someone had been sitting there minutes before. The blueprint that should not exist. When Camp J shut down, most documentation was lost. But one man kept a copy. A former maintenance chief, now in his 70s, slid a folder across the table like it was radioactive. Inside, a blueprint stamped 1979, internal use only. We compared it to the modern layout. They didn't match. Not even close. There was a hidden sublevel beneath the segregation cells. A long hallway labeled OBSRV2. A triangular room with no doors. A shaft leading down into something marked Heatwell. A chamber connected to C13, which officially has no adjacent rooms. A section marked Restricted. Phase 2. And then we saw it. A small handwritten note in the margin. Never go below level 3. Keep the hatch welded. When we asked him what level 3 was, the man shut the folder quickly. His hands trembled. He said, "Below level 3 ain't man-made." We asked what he meant. He refused to explain. All he added before ending the interview was, "They shouldn't have built the unit there." The hatch no one will talk about. There is a place in Camp J few guards even knew existed. A trapdoor. A hatch. Hidden under a removable steel bench in the old shower area. We only learned about it from a former lieutenant who spoke on the condition of anonymity. He said the hatch was originally part of an early drainage system, but no one ever found where it actually led. Maintenance crews sent to inspect it in the 80s refused to go down. They reported a foul smell, a deep breathing sound echoing up from a shaft, cold air rising from below, a metallic scraping like something moving, and worst of all, the sound of someone whispering their names. The hatch was welded shut in 1992. But in 2004, during a heavy rainstorm, guards doing a walkthrough noticed the bench covering the hatch had been pushed aside. The welds? Broken from the inside. One of the guards quit that night. When we asked him what he believed was down there, he said, "Not who. What? What really happened in the final riot?" The public story goes like this. Camp J closed after a small disturbance. What really happened was a riot, and the details were buried immediately. 3 inmates were found dead, but not from weapons, not from guards, not from each other. Autopsies, sealed from public view, described. No external injuries. Eyes wide open, mouths frozen mid-scream, hearts that shut down simultaneously. A lieutenant who responded to the riot told us, "Those boys didn't fight nobody. They died scared." During the chaos, multiple guards reported flickering lights, cell doors unlocking on their own, a figure moving between the cells, screams coming from empty rooms, radios failing across the unit, a cold wind blowing down the tier despite no broken windows. But the detail that made several officers resign, for different guards swore they saw the same shape, a tall, humanoid silhouette standing inside the sealed C13 cell. Even though that door had been welded shut for years, cameras captured nothing. Sound sensors captured everything. A deep, rumbling voice repeating 3 words. "I am here." The man who never left Camp J. A photograph of a missing inmate report. The name blacked out with thick black marker. A red stamp, classified. In every interview, guards, inmates, medical staff, one name kept coming up. A man who died in Camp J. A man whose body was never removed. A man the guards refer to only as the one they left. Officially, there is no record of such a person. Unofficially, everyone knows the legend. He was an inmate housed in the deepest cell of the segregation tier decades ago. Isolated for months. No visits. No sunlight. No sound but his own voice. He died in the cell, alone. But the story doesn't end there. Guards swear that, after his death, they heard him pacing at night. His voice echoed down the tier. His shadow appeared on walls. His cell door rattled even when sealed. His name appeared carved into new scratches. Inmates had nightmares about a man whispering from the ceiling. And then came the most chilling part. When Camp J was shut down, a team was sent to photograph every cell. In C13, The camera captured something no one can explain. A figure, standing in the corner, blurry, tall, watching the photographer. But when they viewed the image again, the figure was gone. Not erased. Gone from the memory card entirely. The file name still existed, but it had no data. The photographer quit the same night. Why Camp J was really abandoned. The official line is simple. Camp J was closed due to outdated conditions. But every guard, every inmate, every maintenance worker told us the same thing. Camp J wasn't shut down. It was contained. A warden who retired in 2014, one of the rare ones willing to speak, gave us the final piece of the truth. He said, Camp J wasn't haunted. It was infected. We asked, infected by what? He looked out the window for a long time, then said, pain, suffering, isolation, violence, death. It soaked into the walls, into the floors, into the foundation itself. He turned to us and added, you put enough broken men in a place like that, and eventually the place breaks back. As we packed up our equipment, he added one more sentence, the one that ends our film. If you open those doors again, you won't just let out what was trapped in there. You'll let out what it became. What you just saw is more than a story. It's a reality lived by thousands behind bars. If you believe in uncovering the truth, the story hidden behind concrete walls and silence, then join us. Subscribe to Behind Bars TV and never miss a chapter in the world's most dangerous stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, and remember, freedom and confinement are sometimes only a wall apart.